Welcome to Wife Cheating Story. I hope you have an enjoyable and relaxing time listening. Let's get started.
We're grateful for each view and comment. Tell us, from which country or city are you watching today? We enjoy connecting with our global audience. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. Foundations of Sand. Theo Blackwell stood at the glass wall of his home office, overlooking the sprawling estate he'd built from nothing. At 43, he'd transformed from a scrappy street kid to the owner of the most successful private security firm in the state. His hands, once calloused from street fights, now bore only the faint scars of his past, reminders of how far he'd come. The evening sun cast long shadows across the manicured lawn as he swirled 18-year-old scotch in a crystal tumbler. 10 years of marriage to Vanessa had given him stability, but lately, something fell off. Little things, late nights at her gallery, mysterious phone calls, and her growing distance, needled his instincts, the same instincts that had kept him alive in his youth. Working late again, Vanessa's voice came from behind him. She'd entered silently, a habit he once found endearing but now struck him as calculated. "Just finishing up," Theo replied, turning to face his wife. Vanessa Blackwell, with her honey-blonde hair and emerald eyes, still possessed the beauty that had captured him a decade ago. Her family, old money with political connections, had initially opposed their marriage. Only her cousin, Ray Palmer, had welcomed Theo, becoming his closest friend. Ray called. Vanessa said, her perfectly manicured fingers toying with her pendant, a nervous tell he'd cataloged years ago. "He's coming by tomorrow. Something about investment opportunities." Theo nodded, filing away the slight tremor in her voice. Looking forward to it. That night, lying beside Vanessa, Theo reviewed the inconsistencies of the past months. His military background and years building a security empire had taught him to identify patterns. Something was happening in his own home, and his security specialist, Miguel Ortiz, had reluctantly confirmed his suspicions earlier that week. "I found something, boss," Miguel had said, his loyalty to Theo outweighing any discomfort. "Your home security system has been accessed remotely several times. Someone's been disabling the cameras periodically." "Who?" "The access comes from within your network. Someone with your passwords." Theo had thanked Miguel without revealing his growing certainty about who was betraying him. Tomorrow, he'd confront Ray, the man he once considered a brother, the only person besides Vanessa with full access to his home systems. What he didn't expect was that Ray would make the first move. Chapter 2. The Unwelcome Visitors. The doorbell's chime pulled Theo from restless sleep. Vanessa's side of the bed was empty, unusual for 7 a.m. on a Saturday. Grabbing his phone, he noticed the security app was offline. The hair on the back of his neck stood up. Descending the stairs in his pajamas, he caught a glimpse of himself in the hallway mirror, a tall, broad-shouldered man with penetrating gray eyes and a face that rarely revealed his thoughts. He learned long ago that showing emotion was a weakness. Theo answered the door to find 2 police officers standing on his porch. Officer Bennett, a square-jawed woman with cropped hair, and Officer Donovan, a younger man whose hand rested too close to his holster. "Mr. Blackwell?" Bennett asked. "We received a concerning call from your wife." Before Theo could respond, a third figure stepped out from behind them. Ray Palmer, his perfectly tailored suit at odds with the early hour, his usually friendly face twisted into something ugly. "You weren't supposed to find out about us." Ray smirked, the familiarity in his voice when saying us confirming Theo's suspicions. "Now we have to handle this differently." The realization hit Theo like a physical blow. His wife and his best friend. The betrayal was both exactly what he'd suspected and somehow still shocking in its audacity. Handle what differently? Theo's voice remained steady even as his mind cataloged escape routes, weapons within reach, and the strange absence of official procedure in this police visit. Officer Bennett glanced uncomfortably at Ray before speaking. "Your wife has filed a restraining order claiming threatening behavior. We need you to come with us." "She's claiming I threatened her?" Theo noticed Bennett's badge number was obscured and Donovan's name tag was missing entirely. Something was very wrong. "We have evidence," Ray said smugly, pulling out his phone. "Vanessa's been recording your outbursts for months." The phone played audio of Theo's voice threatening violence. Expertly spliced together from security lectures he'd given at conferences, his words twisted into something sinister. "That's doctored," Theo said, but the officers were already moving toward him. "We need you to come to the station," Bennett insisted, revealing handcuffs. In that moment, Theo saw the full picture. Ray's political connections, the false police, the fabricated evidence. This wasn't just an affair. It was a calculated takedown. "I need to get dressed," Theo said, stepping back into the house. "I'll accompany you," Donovan said, following him inside. In his bedroom, with Donovan watching, Theo dressed methodically while activating the emergency protocol on his smartwatch. 3 taps for a silent alert to Miguel. Whatever game Ray was playing, it had just begun. Chapter 3: 48 Hours of Hell. The police station turned out to be an abandoned warehouse 30 miles outside the city. As the fake police car pulled up to the decrepit building, Theo's training kicked in. He'd been calculating distances, memorizing turns, and assessing his captors since they'd left his home. Inside, Ray waited with 2 more men, professional muscle by their stance and vigilant eyes. The warehouse interior had been arranged with a makeshift cell, surveillance equipment, and what appeared to be a video recording setup. "Welcome to your temporary accommodations," Ray said, motioning to the cell. "You'll be making a video confession admitting to financial crimes, domestic abuse, and transferring your company to me as restitution." Theo stared at him, his expression revealing nothing. "And if I refuse?" Ray smiled. "Then this becomes unpleasant for everyone, especially Vanessa. She may be leaving you for me, but I'd rather not hurt her." The threat against Vanessa, despite her betrayal, sparked something primal in Theo. He allowed himself to be locked in the cell, biding his time. For 48 hours, they worked on breaking him: sleep deprivation, limited water, psychological tactics. Ray regularly video called Vanessa, showing her Theo's cooperation, while secretly threatening her if she backed out of their plan. What Ray didn't know was that Theo had activated more than an alert to Miguel. His watch contained a tracking device, and his security team had been monitoring his location since his abduction. More importantly, Ray had no idea of the contingency plans Theo had established years ago for exactly this type of situation. On the second night, as exhaustion began to dull his captor's vigilance, Theo heard the distant sound of helicopter rotors. Moments later, the warehouse was plunged into darkness as the power was cut. The rescue was swift and professional. Miguel led a team of Theo's security specialists, all former military, through the warehouse with precision. When the lights came back on, Ray and his accomplices were zip-tied on the floor, and Theo was being checked by a medic. "Boss, we've got a problem," Miguel said, his expression grim. "We've been monitoring your home's security remotely. Mrs. Blackwell packed bags and left with an unknown man 2 hours ago. They headed to the airport." Theo nodded, processing this information. "Any communication from her?" "None." Miguel hesitated. "But there's something else. We intercepted some encrypted communications between Ray and someone using the handle Artemis. They mentioned something called Protocol Widowmaker scheduled to activate if Ray doesn't check in by morning." Theo's blood ran cold. He knew Artemis was Vanessa's college nickname. Whatever she and Ray had planned, it wasn't over. Just as Miguel finished speaking, his phone rang. The local police, the real police, had found an abandoned car registered to Vanessa at the airport parking garage. Inside was a handwritten note addressed to Theo. "By the time you read this, it will be too late. I'm sorry it came to this." As dawn broke on the 3rd day, Theo's phone rang with an international number. The voice on the other end was formal, clinical. "Mr. Blackwell? This is the American Embassy in Zurich. I regret to inform you there's been an incident involving your wife. I'm afraid the news is grave. She's no more." Chapter 4: Ashes and Lies. "She's no more on American soil, Mr. Blackwell," the embassy official continued. Mrs. Blackwell entered Switzerland 6 hours ago under a different name, but our facial recognition flagged her. We're calling because her entry triggered a security alert in our system, apparently placed by your company last year. Theo sat in his home office, the morning sun illuminating the evidence wall he'd created. Photos, documents, and timeline charts covered the surface. 3 days had passed since his rescue and Vanessa's disappearance. What name is she using? Theo asked, his voice devoid of emotion. Diana Keller. She's traveling with a man identified as Paul Mercer. Theo thanked the official and ended the call. Paul Mercer, a name Theo recognized from Vanessa's gallery connections. Not Ray, which meant there were more players in this game than he'd initially thought. Miguel entered with a folder. The forensic team finished analyzing Ray's devices. You were right. This goes beyond an affair. The folder contained evidence of an elaborate scheme spanning 2 years. Ray and Vanessa had been systematically gathering information on Theo's business operations, client lists, and security protocols. They'd been planning to strip him of everything, his company, his assets, even his reputation, using fabricated evidence of criminal activity. There's more, Miguel said hesitantly. We found references to a life insurance policy Vanessa took out on you 6 months ago. $10 million. Double indemnity for accidental death. Theo absorbed this information with cold calculation. The woman he'd trusted with his life had been plotting his death. What about the house in Vermont? Theo asked. Miguel looked surprised. How did you know about that? Vanessa has been checking real estate listings on our shared computer. Careless. Theo's expression hardened. I need everything on Paul Mercer, and I want to know what's in that house. 3 hours later, Theo had his answer. The Vermont property, purchased through a shell company linked to Mercer, contained a fully equipped identity forging operation. Vanessa and her accomplices had been planning this for far longer than he'd suspected. Boss, Miguel interrupted his thoughts. Ray's asking to see you. Says he has information you need. In the basement security room, Ray sat handcuffed to a metal table. His once immaculate appearance was disheveled, his confident smirk replaced by desperate fear. She played us both, Ray blurted as Theo entered. Vanessa's been working with Mercer for years, since before you met her. I only found out recently. And yet you helped her, Theo replied coldly. She said it was just about the money, that we'd disappear together after you were discredited. I didn't know about the life insurance until yesterday, when Mercer contacted me. Theo leaned forward. What's protocol Widowmaker? Ray's face paled. It's not what you think. It's not about killing you. It's about killing your legacy. Everything you've built. Mercer has access to your company's security infrastructure. They're planning to use it to compromise your highest profile clients. When? 3 days. The annual security conference in Geneva. They're going to demonstrate how to breach your systems during your company's keynote presentation. Theo stood, his decision made. Miguel, book me on the next flight to Zurich. And secure our friend here somewhere comfortable. We're not finished with him. As Theo packed, his phone rang, a video call from an unknown number. He answered to see Vanessa's face, her expression a mixture of confidence and caution. You're more resilient than we anticipated, she said. Impressive. What do you want, Vanessa? To give you a choice. Walk away now. Transfer the company to the holding account we've prepared, sign the divorce papers acknowledging your infidelity and abuse, and disappear. Or stay and fight, and watch everything you've built crumble while facing criminal charges we've carefully constructed. Theo studied her face, this stranger wearing his wife's features. You miscalculated. You should have killed me when you had the chance. A flicker of uncertainty crossed Vanessa's face before she masked it. That was never the plan. I'm not a monster, Theo. No, he agreed coldly. Just a thief and a traitor. But I'm curious, was any of it real? For a moment, Vanessa's composure cracked. Some of it. In the beginning. She recovered quickly. It doesn't matter now. You have 48 hours to decide. After she disconnected, Theo turned to find Miguel watching him with concern. What's the play, boss? Theo's gray eyes were glacial. We're going to Geneva. But first, I need to make a stop at the safety deposit box Vanessa doesn't know about. Chapter 5. Ghosts from the Past. The quiet Swiss village of Meiringen, nestled beneath towering alpine peaks, seemed an unlikely place for confronting ghosts. Theo navigated the narrow streets until he reached a small chalet on the outskirts of town. The elderly man who answered the door recognized him immediately. "Herr Blackwell, it has been many years." "Too many, Klaus," Theo replied. "I need access to the vault." Inside, Klaus led him to a hidden basement room containing a steel door with a biometric lock. The vault beyond held weapons, cash in various currencies, and multiple identity packages. Contingencies Theo had established before he'd ever met Vanessa. But he had come for something specific, a leather-bound journal and a hard drive. "I tracked down the information you requested," Klaus said, handing Theo a tablet. "The woman you married, she was not who she claimed." The tablet contained a comprehensive dossier on Vanessa Chamberlain. Born Amanda Pierce, orphaned at 16, disappeared from foster care records at 17. She resurfaced 4 years later as Vanessa Chamberlain, complete with fabricated family connections, education credentials, and social history. And her cousin Ray? No relation. He was her handler for the organization. Theo absorbed this revelation with grim validation of his suspicions. What organization? They call themselves the Coterie. They target wealthy individuals, particularly self-made ones without family connections. Their methods are always the same: romantic entanglement, isolation, and eventual financial extraction. "How did I miss this?" Theo muttered, more to himself than Klaus. The older man's expression softened slightly. Even the most vigilant have blind spots when it comes to matters of the heart. That evening, in his hotel suite overlooking Lake Geneva, Theo reviewed everything he'd learned. The coterie had been targeting him since before he'd met Vanessa. His success and lack of family ties had made him the perfect mark. The revelation explained so much. Vanessa's unexpected appearance in his life, her cousin's convenient friendship, her family's initial resistance that gradually softened, creating the illusion of hard-won acceptance. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Miguel entered with a secure laptop. "We've located Mercer and Vanessa," he reported. "They're staying at the Remington Hotel under their aliases. The security conference begins tomorrow, and they've registered as attendees. And our other preparations? In place. Your former client from the NSA came through. We have everything you requested." Theo nodded. "Get some rest. Tomorrow we begin." After Miguel left, Theo opened the leather journal from the vault. It contained details of his life before he became Theodore Blackwell, back when he was Tyler Bishop, a nobody from nowhere with nothing but raw intelligence and survival instincts. He had buried that identity years ago, but perhaps it was time for Tyler Bishop to resurface one last time. As dawn broke over Geneva, Theo activated the first phase of his counterattack. While Vanessa and Mercer believed they were moving invisibly through the city, his team had been tracking their every move, recording their conversations, and mapping their connections. Most importantly, he had identified the third mastermind behind the coterie's Swiss operations, Helvetica Bank Senior Vice President, Leonard Rousseau, who was scheduled to meet Vanessa that afternoon. By noon, Theo had positioned himself in the cafe across from the bank, watching through specialized glasses as Vanessa and Rousseau conversed in his private office. Thanks to the surveillance equipment his team had planted, he could hear every word. "The accountant prepared," Rousseau was saying. "Once the demonstration at the conference exposes the security flaws, his clients will abandon him. The company's stock will plummet, and we'll acquire controlling interest for pennies on the dollar." Vanessa smiled. "And the evidence linking him to the security breaches? Already in place. The authorities will be convinced he engineered the vulnerabilities as part of an extortion scheme." "Perfect," Vanessa replied, looking genuinely pleased for the first time since Theo had met her. "Have you heard from Ray?" Rousseau frowned. "Nothing. That's concerning. He's probably just being cautious. After Theo escaped, he'd need to lay low." As they continued planning, Theo silently thanked Vanessa for confirming everything he needed to know. The coterie wasn't just after his money. They wanted his company, his reputation, and ultimately, his freedom. What they didn't know was that his company had no security vulnerabilities to expose. The flaws they planned to demonstrate had been planted by Vanessa herself. Backdoors that existed only in a parallel system Theo had created once he suspected betrayal. In his earpiece, Miguel's voice sounded. Facial recognition just flagged another coterie operative entering the bank. Benjamin Foster, the guy who posed as Donovan, the fake cop. Theo watched as Foster was escorted to Rousseau's office. The pieces were falling into place. Now it was time to spring the trap. Chapter 6. The Architect of Revenge. The Grand Geneva Hotel's ballroom buzzed with the technology sector's elite. Security companies, software developers, and government contractors mingled in an atmosphere of collegial competition. At the center of it all stood Blackguard Security's elaborate booth, showcasing their latest innovations, all developed under Theo's leadership. Theo moved through the crowd unnoticed, his appearance subtly altered. The confident CEO was gone, replaced by a nondescript IT specialist with brown hair and glasses. From this vantage point, he observed Vanessa and Mercer circulating, stopping occasionally to speak with targeted individuals, all clients of Blackguard. "They're laying groundwork," Miguel murmured through the earpiece, "creating doubt about our systems before the demonstration." "Let them," Theo replied softly. "Is everything in place?" "Yes. The real presentation is ready to go once you give a signal." Theo checked his watch. 2 hours until the scheduled keynote, where Mercer planned to demonstrate Blackguard's vulnerabilities to the assembled crowd. Little did they know, Theo had already met privately with his most important clients, warning them of a planned penetration test demonstration and securing their cooperation. He slipped away to a private room where the final pieces of his plan awaited. On multiple screens, he could see various coterie members arriving at the conference, more than he'd initially suspected. The organization was committing significant resources to this operation. A quiet knock preceded the entrance of a silver-haired woman in an impeccable suit. "Mr. Blackwell, or should I say Mr. Bishop?" "Director Walsh," Theo acknowledged. "Thank you for coming." Isabella Walsh, Deputy Director of Financial Crimes at Interpol, had been skeptical when Theo first contacted her. Now, looking at the evidence he'd compiled on the coterie's operations across 3 continents, her skepticism had transformed into determined focus. "You've given us enough to take down their entire European network," she said. "What are you certain about doing it this way? We could arrest them now." "No." Theo's voice was resolute. "I need them to activate their plan publicly. Only then will we have irrefutable evidence of their methods and reach." Walsh nodded reluctantly. "My team is in position. Just give the signal when you're ready." As she left, Theo turned to the final screen, a live feed from a secure facility where Ray Palmer sat in an interrogation room, looking increasingly desperate as he recorded his full confession about the coterie's operations, his role in them, and their plans for Theo. "It's time," Theo said to Miguel. "Let's give them the demonstration they're expecting." The ballroom lights dimmed as Theo's COO, Daniel Freeman, took the stage for Blackguard's keynote presentation. In the audience, Vanessa and Mercer sat with anticipatory smiles, surrounded by the company's most valuable clients. "Ladies and gentlemen," Daniel began, "today we are thrilled to demonstrate Blackguard's newest security protocol, one that represents a revolutionary approach to threat detection." As he continued, Mercer slipped away to a backstage area where he'd planted equipment to hijack the presentation. Right on schedule, the main screen flickered, and what appeared to be Blackguard's client database appeared, complete with access codes and security vulnerabilities. Gasps spread through the audience as sensitive information from major corporations and government agencies seemingly became visible. Mercer returned to his seat, exchanging a triumphant glance with Vanessa. Then, abruptly, the screen changed. Ray Palmer's face appeared, his expression haunted. "My name is Raymond Palmer," he began. "For the past 5 years, I've been part of a criminal organization known as the Coterie. What you are witnessing is not a security breach, but a carefully orchestrated fraud designed to destroy Blackguard Security and its founder, Theodore Blackwell." The screen split to show surveillance footage of Vanessa, Mercer, and various coterie members planning the operation. Their detailed conversations about fabricating evidence, creating false identities, and embezzling funds played for the stunned audience. In her seat, Vanessa froze, her face draining of color as her own voice echoed through the ballroom. Once we've destroyed his reputation, transferring the company assets will be simple. He'll be too busy fighting criminal charges to stop us. Before Mercer could reach for what Theo knew was a concealed weapon, Interpol agents moved in, surrounding them. Throughout the ballroom, other coterie members found themselves similarly contained. Director Walsh approached the podium. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain calm. I am Deputy Director Walsh from Interpol. What you're witnessing is the culmination of a multi-year investigation into a criminal enterprise specializing in identity fraud, extortion, and financial crimes." As the agents led Vanessa past him, she finally noticed Theo in his disguise. Their eyes met, and her shock turned to bitter understanding. "It was all a trap," she said, her voice barely audible. Theo removed his glasses. "No," he corrected her coldly. "It was justice." Chapter 7. The Unraveling Web. 3 months after the Geneva conference, Theo sat in his attorney's office reviewing the latest developments. The coterie investigation had expanded dramatically, uncovering operations in 12 countries and identifying over 30 victims of their elaborate schemes. The prosecution has offered Vanessa a deal, Howard Phillips, his silver-haired attorney, explained. 20 years instead of life, if she provides details on all coterie operations. "Has she taken it?" Theo asked, his voice neutral. "Not yet. She's asking to speak with you first." Theo considered this. "Arrange it." 2 days later, he sat across from Vanessa in a sterile prison meeting room. Her designer clothes had been replaced by a standard jumpsuit, her carefully maintained appearance now stripped of artifice. Yet she still carried herself with the poise that had once captivated him. "You've been busy," she said, gesturing to the file of newspaper clippings she'd been collecting about the coteries unraveling. "Congratulations on the government contracts. Your company's stock has doubled since the arrest." "I didn't come to discuss business," Theo replied. "You wanted to see me." Vanessa leaned forward. "I wanted you to know that not everything was a lie. There were moments, real moments, between us." Theo's expression remained impassive. "Is that supposed to matter now?" "No," she admitted. "But before I give them everything, I thought you deserved to know the truth. I wasn't supposed to marry you. The original plan was a shorter con. Get close, extract funds, disappear. I changed the plan." "Why?" A ghost of a smile crossed her face. "Because I recognized something in you that reminded me of myself. That drive to reinvent yourself, to bury the past, and create something new." Theo studied her, seeing past the practiced manipulation to the kernel of truth beneath. "You had choices, Vanessa. Or Amanda. Or whatever your real name is." "Elise," she said softly. "Elise Novak. That's who I was born." "Well, Elise, your choices led you here. Mine led me to survive you." She nodded slowly. "There's one more thing you should know. The coterie doesn't forgive failure. They'll keep coming for you. Through me. Through others. As long as you have what they want. And what is that? The only thing they truly value. The ability to disappear and start again. Your contingency protocols, your identity packages, your escape networks. The things that made you impossible to truly con." Theo stood to leave. "Consider this my final gift to Vanessa, the woman I thought I married. Take the deal. Whoever's left of the coterie can't protect you anymore." As he reached the door, she called out, "The morning after our wedding, when you brought me coffee in bed and we talked about building a home together, that was real. I meant every word." Theo paused, not turning back. "So did I." Outside the prison, Miguel waited with updates on their ongoing operation to dismantle what remained of the coterie. While Interpol had captured many members, the shadowy leadership remained elusive. "We identified another potential victim," Miguel reported as they drove back to Theo's hotel. "Andrew Carstairs, tech entrepreneur in Boston. The coterie operative posing as his fiancée matches the description of a woman who visited Vanessa last week, posing as her sister. They're already regrouping," Theo mused. "Faster than expected. What's our next move?" Theo stared out the window at the passing cityscape. We warn him. Then we follow the trail back to their leadership. Over the next weeks, Theo transformed his security company into something new. While maintaining its legitimate business, he created a specialized division focused on identifying and preventing long-con operations. Using his understanding of the coteries' methods, he developed protocols to recognize their patterns and protect potential victims. Andrew Carstairs had been skeptical when Theo approached him with evidence about his fiancée, Sophia. But when confronted with proof, Sophia had fled, taking with her access codes to Carstairs' developmental technology and prototype designs worth millions. "How did you know?" Carstairs had asked Theo afterward, his expression haunted by the betrayal. "Because I lived it," Theo had answered simply. Now, tracking Sophia had led them to an unexpected discovery, a training facility in rural Montana where the coterie prepared their operatives. Under the guise of an exclusive finishing school called the Artemis Academy, young women with troubled pasts were being molded into sophisticated con artists. "We've identified the headmistress," Miguel reported, showing Theo surveillance photos of an elegant older woman. Diane Winters, 72, supposedly retired from a career in international banking. In reality, she's been running the coterie's North American operations for decades. Theo studied the woman's aristocratic features. "She looks familiar." "She should," Miguel replied grimly. "We found her in Vanessa's background." Diane Winters was the foster mother who took in Amanda Pierce, the girl who became your wife. The pieces clicked into place. Vanessa hadn't been recruited by the coterie. She had been raised by them, groomed from adolescence for exactly the kind of operation she'd run on Theo. "We have enough for the FBI to raid the academy," Miguel continued. "But that would only capture the training operation, not the leadership behind it." Theo's expression hardened with resolve. "Then we need to make Diane Winters lead us to them." Chapter 8. The Deadly Game. The Artemis Academy sprawled across 50 acres of Montana wilderness, its elegant buildings belying its true purpose. From his vantage point on a neighboring ridge, Theo observed the comings and goings through high-powered binoculars. "Security is tighter than it appears," Miguel noted, pointing out disguised camera positions and patrol patterns. "These aren't just rent-a-cops. They're using military formations." "Makes sense," Theo replied. "They're protecting their most valuable asset, the next generation of operatives." Their surveillance had revealed 23 young women in residence, ranging from teenagers to women in their early 20s. Each day followed a rigorous schedule of physical training, language studies, social engineering exercises, and what appeared to be psychological conditioning. "It's like watching a finishing school for spies," Miguel had commented during their first day of observation. "That's exactly what it is," Theo had responded grimly. Now, after a week of surveillance, they had identified a vulnerability. Diane Winters left the compound every Sunday to attend church in a nearby town, accompanied by only 2 security personnel. "We're not actually going to abduct her from a church, are we?" Miguel asked, concern evident in his voice. "No," Theo assured him. "We're going to make her come to us." The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Using information gathered from Vanessa's reluctant cooperation, they had identified Winters' one weakness: her biological son, Thomas, whom she had placed with an adoptive family 40 years earlier, while establishing her coterie identity. He had grown up unaware of his mother's true occupation, believing her to be a distant aunt who occasionally sent birthday cards. Now an accounting professor in Minneapolis, Thomas Hunter was about to receive an unexpected inheritance, and with it, the attention of the coterie. The fabricated documents arrived at Hunter's office by courier. A letter from a fictional law firm informing him of a substantial inheritance from a previously unknown relative, along with details suggesting this relative had connections to Diane Winters. Just enough information to pique curiosity, not enough to reveal the trap. As expected, Hunter began researching his supposed benefactor. Also as expected, the coterie's surveillance detected this activity. Within 3 days, Diane Winters had arranged an accidental meeting with Hunter at a Minneapolis cafe. What she couldn't know was that every word of their conversation was being recorded by the sophisticated equipment Theo had provided to Hunter beforehand, after approaching him with the truth about his mother. "I've spent my life wondering about my birth parents," Hunter had told Theo when presented with the evidence. "Finding out my mother is essentially a criminal mastermind wasn't exactly what I imagined." Now, as Winters attempted to establish rapport with her son while subtly probing for information about his sudden inheritance, Hunter played his role perfectly. Curious, slightly naive, but not suspicious. "I'm just surprised," he told her during their second meeting. "The documents mention assets in the Cayman Islands. I'm not even sure how to access those." Winter's expression betrayed nothing, but her pulse, monitored by thermal imaging from Theo's team across the street, quickened. "I might know someone who could help you navigate that," she offered casually. 3 days later, Hunter was on a private jet to Grand Cayman, ostensibly to meet with financial advisors arranged by his helpful aunt. In reality, he was being delivered directly to the coteries' inner circle, exactly as Theo had planned. "He's in," Miguel confirmed as they monitored Hunter's tracking devices from their hotel suite in Georgetown. "The meeting is set for tomorrow at the Serenity Cove Resort. Private bungalows, restricted access." Theo nodded. "Alert the tactical team, and make sure our friend in room 212 is comfortable." Room 212 held Leonard Rousseau, the banker who had worked with Vanessa in Geneva. After his arrest, facing multiple life sentences, he had proven surprisingly willing to cooperate in exchange for considerations at sentencing. His knowledge of the coteries' financial operations had been the key to identifying their leadership structure. "There are 7 of them," Rousseau had explained. "The founders, they call themselves. Most have never met in person. They communicate through encrypted channels and proxies. But once a year, they gather to distribute profits and assign new targets." Now, lured by the prospect of a significant new asset, Hunter's supposed inheritance, actually a sophisticated financial trap designed by Theo, 5 of the 7 founders had traveled to Grand Cayman for an unscheduled meeting. The next evening, as Hunter sat nervously in a luxurious bungalow surrounded by the coteries' leadership, Theo's operation reached its culmination. While Interpol agents positioned themselves around the resort, Theo monitored the proceedings through Hunter's concealed equipment. "Mr. Hunter," began an elegant man in his 60s who had introduced himself as Julian Clark, "we're very interested in helping you manage this unexpected windfall. But first, we need to understand exactly what you've inherited." As Hunter began sharing the fabricated details, Theo gave the signal. Simultaneously, Interpol teams moved in on the bungalow and on locations in 7 countries where the coteries' digital operations were headquartered. The raid was swift and precise. Within minutes, 5 of the coteries' 7 founders were in custody, along with terabytes of incriminating data and financial records detailing decades of criminal operations. In the aftermath, as Hunter was safely extracted and the arrested founders processed, Director Walsh approached Theo on the resort's deserted beach. "Congratulations," she said. "You've just helped us dismantle one of the most sophisticated criminal enterprises we've ever encountered." Theo watched the waves, his expression unreadable. "Not quite. 2 founders are still out there." Walsh nodded. "We'll find them." "No," Theo said with quiet certainty. "I will." Chapter 9. Ashes of Betrayal. 6 months later, Theo stood on the observation deck of a Chicago penthouse, watching snow fall over the city. The final pieces of his vengeance had fallen into place with a precision that would have been beautiful if it weren't so devastating. The missing coterie founders had been more elusive than anticipated. 1. A reclusive technology magnate named Victor Kane had been tracked to his compound in New Zealand, where local authorities had found him dead from an apparent suicide, though Theo suspected a more sinister explanation. The 7th and final founder had proven most difficult to identify. Unlike the others, this person operated completely in shadow, known only by the codename Genesis. While Interpol pursued conventional investigation methods, Theo had taken a different approach. Using the psychological profiles he developed of the coteries' leadership and the patterns he'd observed in their operations, he had constructed a prediction model of where Genesis might surface next. The model had led him to an unexpected conclusion, one that had seemed impossible until he'd found the evidence hidden in encrypted files from Diane Winter's personal server. His phone buzzed with a text from Miguel, package delivered, en route to rendezvous. Theo took one last look at the city before heading to the helipad where his private helicopter waited. The journey to the remote lake house took less than an hour. Inside the rustic but luxurious cabin, a fire crackled in the stone hearth. Miguel stood guard over a bound figure in one of the leather armchairs, an elderly man with sharp features and calculating eyes. "Mr. Blackwell," the man acknowledged with a slight nod. "I was wondering when you'd find me." "Harold Chamberlain," Theo replied, taking the seat opposite him. "Or should I call you Genesis?" The man who had presented himself to the world as Vanessa's father smiled thinly. "I've had many names over the years. That one served its purpose, creating a fictional family for Amanda Pierce to inhabit when she became Vanessa, giving her the credibility she needed to get close to me." Among other things, Chamberlain agreed. "You've been quite thorough in dismantling my organization. I suppose congratulations are in order." Theo studied the man who had orchestrated so much destruction. "Why me? There are wealthier targets, easier marks." Chamberlain's eyes gleamed with something like respect. "You were never the primary target, Mr. Blackwell. Or should I say, Mr. Bishop?" The use of his original name, a name he had buried decades ago, sent a chill through Theo. "Your security protocols," Chamberlain continued, "your contingency plans, your ability to create and discard identities at will. These were always the true prize. The Coterie has been trying to acquire your methods since you first appeared on our radar 15 years ago. So Vanessa was our most promising operative, the only one we believed could get close enough to learn your secrets." A shadow of what might have been regret crossed his features. "I didn't anticipate that she would develop genuine feelings for you. It compromised her effectiveness." Theo absorbed this revelation with cold clarity. "And now," Chamberlain regarded him with professional assessment, "now you have a choice. The coterie is finished, you've seen to that. But there will always be demand for what we provided. You could rebuild it, improve it. With your security knowledge and my networks, you're proposing a partnership," Theo stated flatly. "I'm offering evolution," Chamberlain corrected. "You've proven yourself more capable than anyone who's ever come against us. Together, we could create something unprecedented." For a moment, Theo allowed himself to consider the possibility. The power would bring, the resources, the ability to operate beyond conventional boundaries. Then he thought of the lives destroyed by the coterie's operations, the calculated cruelty of their methods. "I already have something unprecedented," Theo said finally, standing. "It's called integrity." He nodded to Miguel, who moved forward with zip ties. "What happens now?" Chamberlain asked, his composure finally slipping. "Now, justice happens," Theo replied. "The complete server records from your New Zealand compound have been delivered to Interpol. They'll find evidence linking you to operations going back 30 years. You'll spend the rest of your life in prison." As Miguel secured Chamberlain, Theo's phone rang, a call he'd been expecting. "Mr. Blackwell," Director Walsh's voice came through clearly. "We received your package. The evidence is overwhelming. We're moving on the locations you identified. And the special consideration I requested? Granted, though I don't understand why you want her transferred to a minimum security facility after everything she did." Theo glanced at Chamberlain, the man who had raised Vanessa from childhood to become a weapon. She was as much a victim as a perpetrator. Sometimes the lines between predator and prey aren't as clear as we'd like them to be. After ending the call, Theo watched as Miguel escorted Chamberlain to the waiting authorities. The final architect of his personal hell was now facing his own reckoning. Later that night, back in a Chicago penthouse, Theo opened the safe hidden behind a painting in his office. Inside was a single envelope containing divorce papers Vanessa had signed from prison. Beneath her signature was a handwritten note. "I know you'll never forgive me. I wouldn't deserve it if you did. But know this. In a life built on lies, you are the one truth I wished I could keep. E. Theo placed the papers in his shredder, watching as they disappeared into confetti. Forgiveness was not in his nature. Not for Vanessa, not for any of them. But understanding had its own kind of closure. On his desk sat brochures for the newly established Blackwell Foundation, created to identify and support young people from troubled backgrounds, potential targets for organizations like the Coterie. Not redemption, but perhaps redirection of the darkness he had navigated. As snow continued to fall outside his window, Theodore Blackwell, once Tyler Bishop, now something altogether different, looked toward the future he had fought to reclaim. The betrayal had forged him into something harder, colder, but ultimately unbroken. He would never forgive. He would never forget. But he would move forward, carrying the ashes of betrayal as a reminder of the price of trust and the value of truth.